As the structure began to take shape, it looked like a grotesque, windowless fortress of stone and dark wood, perched precariously over the abyss. The townspeople grew increasingly hostile, claiming the eyesore would drive down property values and that it was a safety hazard for the curious teenagers who hiked nearby. A petition was even started to have the building condemned before it was finished. Martha watched them from her heights, a small figure in a faded denim jacket, as they gathered at the base of the hill to point and jeer. She saw the children mimic her limp, and she heard the cruel jokes about her building a stairway to nowhere. Yet, for every sneer she received, she added a stone, and for every insult, she polished a beam of cedar. She was driven by a vision that had come to her in a dream, a vision of a light that didn't just warn of danger, but offered a sanctuary for the lost. Things began to change during the great nor'easter of late October, a storm so violent that the oldest residents of Oakhaven said the sky itself seemed to be screaming. The power line snapped like dry twigs, plunging the town into a terrifying, icy darkness, and the surge in the ocean began to swallow the lower piers. In the midst of the chaos, a bus carrying a youth choir from a neighboring state lost its bearings on the flooded coastal road and veered toward the cliffside trail, its brakes failing on the slick, frozen mud. The town was paralyzed, the emergency services overwhelmed, and it seemed a horrific tragedy was inevitable as the bus slid toward the edge of the ravine. It was then, through the blinding sheets of sleet and snow, that a brilliant, warm amber glow erupted from the top of Blackwood Cliff, cutting through the darkness with the intensity of 1,000 suns. The townspeople, huddled in their homes or trapped in their cars, looked up in awe as the tomb Martha had built transformed into a beacon of staggering beauty. It wasn't a house at all. It was a masterfully engineered sanctuary, lined with reflective copper and massive hand-cut lenses that Martha had spent months positioning to catch and amplify light. The bus driver, blinded by the storm, saw the amber radiance and was able to steer toward the light, coming to a halt just feet from the drop-off. But the light was only the beginning. As the families and rescuers rushed toward the cliff, Martha opened the heavy oak doors of her creation. Inside, the town was met with a sight that silenced every mocking voice. The interior was a breathtaking cathedral of memory and warmth, filled with rows of cots, wood-burning stoves already roaring with fire, and enough food and medical supplies to house half the town. Martha had built a life house, a hybrid of a lighthouse, an emergency shelter, and a memorial. The walls were etched with the names of every soul Oakhaven had lost to the sea over the last century, a grand, silent tribute that transformed the building from a madwoman's folly into the town's collective heart. The very people who had signed petitions against her were now being wrapped in warm blankets by her tired, shaking hands. She had installed a gravity-fed water system and a solar-powered array that remained functional even when the rest of the county was dark. As the storm raged outside, the interior of the cliffside sanctuary felt like the inside of a prayer. The townspeople sat in stunned silence, looking at the intricate carvings Martha had made of her husband and grandson, realized that her madness was actually a profound, selfless foresight. In the aftermath of the storm, the mockery died a sudden, permanent death. The town council didn't just withdraw their complaints. They issued a public apology and declared Blackwood Cliff a protected landmark. Silas from the hardware store arrived with a crew of volunteers to help Martha finish the exterior, their heads bowed in a quiet, collective penance. Martha, however, didn't want their apologies. She only wanted the town to understand that grief doesn't have to be a hole we fall into. It can be a foundation we build upon. The Lifehouse became the center of Oakhaven, a place where people went not just for safety during storms, but for peace during their own personal tragedies. Martha Miller was no longer the town's joke. She was their matriarch, the woman who had looked into the abyss and decided to build a bridge of light over it. Years later, the building still stands, its stones weathered by the salt, but its purpose clearer than ever. Martha eventually passed away, leaving the sanctuary to the town, but her spirit remains in every polished piece of copper and every warm ember of the stove. New generations of Oakhaven children are told the story of the woman who was mocked for her vision, taught to look at the tomb on the precipice, as a reminder that the world's judgment is often a veil that hides a miracle. They learn that kindness isn't always a soft word. Sometimes, it's a heavy stone carried up a steep hill in the dark. The light from Blackwood Cliff continues to shine every night, a steady, amber heartbeat that tells every passing ship and every wandering soul that they are seen, they are remembered, and they are finally home. Please leave a comment below with the word miracle. If this story touched your soul and reminded you to never judge a heart you don't fully understand. The legacy of Martha Miller serves as a cinematic testament to the power of a single, determined soul to transform a community through the sheer force of love. When we look at the cliffs of our own lives, the steep challenges that seem insurmountable, we must remember that the stones we throw in judgment are the same stones we could use to build a sanctuary. Martha's story is a call to action for all of us to find our own Blackwood Cliff, to take our pain and our losses and turn them into something that provides warmth for others. It is a reminder that the most beautiful structures are not built with ego, but with the raw, honest hands of someone who knows what it means to lose everything and still wants to give. If Martha's journey of turning grief into a beacon of light moved you, please engage with this video by liking and sharing it with your loved ones. Your engagement helps these messages of resilience reach the hearts of those who need them most. Thank you for watching and for being a part of our community. Would you like me to write another story about a hidden hero, or perhaps a narrative focused on a different emotional theme? The jagged edge of Blackwood Cliff was a place where even the most daring eagles refuse a nest, a vertical graveyard of granite and salt spray that overlooked the churning, merciless Atlantic. Yet, for 7 agonizing months, 60-year-old Martha Miller had been seen hauling buckets of mortar and reclaimed timber up the treacherous goat path, her silhouette a lonely, stubborn ghost against the bruising sunset. The residents of the small, tight-knit town of Oakhaven didn't just whisper. They laughed openly at the local diner, calling her Mad Martha and mocking the tomb on the precipice she was stubbornly erecting with her own gnarled hands. They saw a woman losing her mind to grief after the tragic loss of her husband and grandson in a boating accident, but they had no idea that beneath the sawdust and sweat, Martha was building a miracle that would eventually bring the entire town to its knees in shame and wonder. If this story reminds you that the things people mock are often the things that save us, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder of hope, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us share these powerful stories of resilience and the hidden beauty of the human spirit. Martha's journey didn't begin with madness, but with profound, echoing silence that had inhabited her bones since the day the sea claimed her world. In the United States, in the rugged coastal regions of Maine, life is defined by the water, and Martha had given the ocean everything. Her husband, Thomas, a man whose laughter could fill a cathedral, and their 8-year-old grandson, Leo, who had eyes like the summer sky. When the storm took them, the town offered casseroles and pity for a month, then expected Martha to move on, to sell her family home, and fade quietly into a nursing home. But Martha couldn't fade. She felt a calling toward the very heights everyone else avoided. She used the last of her savings to purchase a strip of land on Blackwood Cliff that the local council deemed useless, and there, amidst the howling winds and the mocking gazes of her neighbors, she began to dig. The challenges were monumental, bordering on the impossible for a woman of her age and stature. Every morning before the sun broke the horizon, Martha was at the site, her hands cracked and bleeding from the abrasive stone, her back an anthem of constant, throbbing pain. The local hardware store owner, a man named Silas who had known Thomas for 40 years, would shake his head as he sold her bags of cement, asking her why she was wasting her twilight years on a fool's errand that would likely crumble into the sea. Martha never answered with words. She only offered a faint, weary smile and continued her labor. She struggled against more than just the elements. She struggled against the internal gravity of her own sorrow, which pulled at her harder than the wind at the cliff's edge. There were nights when she slept in the dirt of the construction site, shivering under a tarp, listening to the waves below and wondering if she was indeed as crazy as the town claimed.